Here we go. Now I have. Okay.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. You are at Thrifty Thursdays. Today, we're going to talk about budgeting using apps or Excel as well. My name is Samantha Roth. I work with the University of Minnesota Extension Service in Scott and Carver counties. And joining me today is Sharon Powell. She is a regional educator based out of the UROC office, which is North Minneapolis, right? Okay, good. I got that right. And we are doing a series of Thirsty Thursdays. This is 3 of 5. And today's budgeting, again, using apps or Excel. And so the whole reason behind this is we just both wanted an opportunity to be able to jump deeper into topics that we talk about when budgeting, and be able to give some time for questions that people may have about those as well. Just a reminder to, what are the steps to creating a successful budget? It's to set your financial goals, understand what it is you want and need, and figure out how that works in to track your expenses for a week, for a month, for a year, however long, to get a good picture, and then prepare your spending plan. Where's everything going to go? Follow that plan, evaluate the plan, and adjust your plan. And you'll do that on a weekly basis. You might do that on a monthly basis. Some people do it on a daily basis. I often say, like when I've gone on a vacation, that's usually when I'm planning daily, because I've set aside like, this is how much I'm going to spend on food. This is how much on activities, like that kind of stuff. So those are the steps to creating a successful budget. So we're actually going to start with Excel. And if you have questions or comments, feel free to put them into the chat. Sharon's monitoring that so we can talk about it. One of the things that we talk about is using Excel, and Google Sheets also has the same or very similar capabilities. And the benefits of using Excel is that it's customizable to what fits your needs. It's also accessible. Most people can use Google Sheets or Excel if you have, a computer or even on your phone. You might be able to do that. And you are also able to think about the 4 parts of budgeting when you use Excel or Google Sheets. So if you haven't come to a budgeting class of Sharon's or mine, or been to any kind of budgeting class, the 4 parts of budgeting is income, expenses, savings, and then debt reduction. And we want to make sure when we're looking at doing an overall budget, or also called a spending plan, that we're thinking about those 4 different areas as well. So this is an example of an Excel document that I use all the time when I'm working with people one-on-one, as well as for myself, and we will share it out to you with a follow-up email. And it's broken down. I just took kind of snapshots of the different parts. So this first part is the monthly income. And the important thing when we think about income is that we want to get a whole picture of what is generating resources for us. So we're going to look at our wages or our salary after taxes. If you receive any benefits, it's important to add those, because if you're receiving food stamps or WIC, women, infant, and children benefits, and then your children age out of the process, you need to know how much income needs to be regenerated to be able to fill in those benefits. If you have anybody else producing income from household members, you might have a teenager and they contribute $50. Maybe, a parent or grandparent lives with you, and they give some money to be able to do that. You want to include that as well. I get phone reimbursement. Everybody's on my cell phone plan. So income from other household members includes that reimbursement from my phone. I actually put that under other income and then make it specific. And that totals up, and that gives you an overall picture of how much money do you have coming in. Now, if you're somebody who's salaried, this is a lot easier because it's fairly, like within a couple of pennies that this is what you're going to get every month or every 2 weeks or every week, however you're paid. If you are somebody who is not a salaried position, it's a little bit trickier to figure out your income. And what you want to do is kind of take the average over all the months, and then the months that have higher income you want to set aside some of that income so that you're able to afford the months that have lower income as well. So that's just one of the ways to kind of compensate for that as well. The next part is your expenses. So I know this is a massive amount of things, and if you're on a phone, it's going to be super tiny. So I apologize for that. But as I said, you'll get this document, and this is a monthly based Excel. You could do a weekly one, and you would just obviously switch it from monthly to a weekly. If you could do a yearly one. If you're just starting to budget, a yearly budget would be really tricky unless you are a new young adult. So 18, 19, 20, and have a few less expenses to kind of figure out as well. So think about your different expenses, your fixed expenses. So those are the things that you pay at the same, on the same date, the same amount every time. So that would be your rent or your mortgage, your cell phone, landline phone, those may be the same, your car payments, that kind of stuff. You also want to think about your flexible expenses. So your groceries, how much you spend in prescription medicine, any, beauty shop, recreation, gas, those would all be kind of those flexible ones. And we also want to take into account our semi-annual and infrequent expenses. So my example is I pay car insurance every 6 months. And so for me to include that in a monthly expense, I take the amount I pay for every 6 months, divide it by 6, and then put that amount per month so that when it comes due in every 6 months, I have that money available. And I saw somebody raise their hand. If you want to unmute or type in the chat your question. Okay, I'm gonna.
Sam, I think it might have been just a blip or something, or maybe
Okay.
they didn't intentionally mean to, but I'll keep watching to make sure.
Okay, sounds good. So think about those things that, may not come on a regular thing. So that could include like gifts, birthday gifts, sports fees that your kids may have, or if you play, in a city league, those sorts of things as well. So think about those things as well, and we want to account for it. So I talked about the nice thing about an Excel or a Google document is that you can include your savings target. So right here, you see this is a monthly savings target. And with savings, we always say to pay yourself first. If you don't treat savings as an expense and make it a priority, we're not going to have a savings. And sometimes that's difficult if, our rent or our mortgage is 50% of our income instead of the 30% that is recommended. But this does give us a monthly savings target. And this monthly savings is, for money to be set aside for your retirement, money to be set aside if that's not already included in things taken out in your things taken out of your paycheck before taxes. With taxes, it could include your emergency fund as well. It could include savings for a specific reason. Maybe you need a different vehicle and know you want to purchase one within 2 years, so you want to set aside money for down payment. So those are the things that are included in that monthly savings target. The other thing that it also includes is, kind of your debt reduction, that fourth part. And so I did not spell revolving correct. Apologies for that. So your credit cards, and what we want to make sure that we are including when we are doing our credit cards, if you have multiple credit cards or if you only have one, is whatever that minimum payment is, to make sure that we are able to keep our payments to our credit cards each month, and that we're not falling behind. And so it's not to put, okay, I owe 1,500 on a credit card. That's what I put there. No, I own 1,500, make a little note to the side. That's what I've typically done. And I have to pay $45 each month in order for that to stay current so that I'm not getting a late fee and that kind of stuff as well. The other thing to think about is when you are doing, is there a question, Sharon?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I raised my hand.
Oh, go ahead.
So when you're using the monthly savings target, do you include the things that are already taken out of your paycheck? Like if you have a 401k or you have some kind of retirement savings plan thing, do you put that here, or do you just start with your net income? That's where I kind of get hosed up. It's like,
right.
Do I look at gross? Do I look at net? What's the best way to do it?
I find it easiest for most people to do your net income instead of your gross. So if your retirement is already being contributed, from your paycheck, then you don't need to add that to your monthly savings target. If you already have, an emergency, because multiple places will let you be able to deposit in multiple accounts. So if you already have your emergency funds coming out, you could not include that. It's kind of up to you. You could always add that to your income and then put in your monthly savings target, but it kind of washes each other's out. It's whatever helps you remember that, yes, I do have this, and a strategy that works for you.
Okay, well, I was trying to I'm later in life, and so it's like, what do I want to look at my whole picture? And have it all in front of me for my financial picture? And, obviously budgeting is a really important part because it's easy to spend and not know where the money goes, yada,
Right.
yada. So, if you had stuff automatically taken out, like going to your emergency fund, or would you account for that somewhere?
So typically when I work with people, or if I do my own, and you can't see it because this here is just a snapshot of it. But below, I always just put in like, $75 taken out per paycheck or twice a month for emergency fund, this much being contributed to retirement. So that I still remember that that's happening, but there's a reason why it's not accounted for in I would call this my active document, the thing I'm looking at
Okay.
every month,
Okay.
because
So
it's
it's like your active,
automated. Yeah.
yeah, nothing that's automatically being saved kind of thing.
Right.
Okay, thank
Right.
you.
And this is for anything kind of extra, or if you don't already have it taken out, to remember to, take it out and either transfer it or hold it in your account so that you have that monthly savings. So good question. I also talked about like the semi-annual and frequent, to put those on. So that could be like my example is car insurance. So if my car insurance is, I'm going to do easy math, $600 every 6 months, then that means I need to set aside $100. And so while like in my account, it won't show that $100, it's going to set aside, it's going to hang out there. And then in 6 months, I'll have that $600 to pay. And so we talked, I think last week or the week before, about 3 levels of savings as well. And so those set aside funds, those things that are coming due, that could be your prescription, medical bills, car insurance, clothing, accessories you may not buy every month as well. All of those things so that you're able to focus on. And yeah, as Sharon said, like this is more of kind of that cash flow that coming in and out, that we want to focus on. The nice thing about Excel or Google is being able to make it specific to your needs. Everybody may need more category, or you may need more categories for food, groceries, eating out. Maybe you want to do your school lunch, that kind of stuff. Maybe you want to break out work lunches versus like enjoyment dinners with friends and family, however you want to do it. Maybe you spend a lot on clothing and want that separated out from accessories. So you can do, you can switch categories, you can change them out however you want. You may not have children, and so you may not need this one, but you might have something else that you want to put in there. So that's the benefit of using one of an Excel or Google sheet as well. So the last part of it is to, what is your monthly net income? Are you going to be in the red, or are you going to be in the black? Does anybody know which one of these is the one you want to be in? So the other thing I like about Excel is that you can set formulas to automatically do your math for you. So, your monthly net income it takes your total monthly income minus your expenses. And that's where we find out our monthly net income. And yes, the people in the chat, you are right. You want to be in the black, which means that you have either a 0 or you have money in there. If you see a negative after it's done its math, that means you're in the red and you're overspending each month. So then if we are overspending, we have to figure out like, how exactly do we, what are we going to do? We can either increase our income by picking up another job, working some overtime, or we can decrease our expenses so that we can go to a $0 or a positive budget as well. And Sue, I think you raised your hand.
I'll lower it. Sorry, that was from before. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to check. And so that's the nice thing. And then, with Excel, you can save it each month. And so then you can compare your January to February and see how you did. And with budgeting, or spending plans, they are active documents. It's not something you develop and then set aside and never look at again. It's something you should be looking at every pay period, or when you're like, wait, how much did I set aside for groceries? Wow, I really went over, groceries have increased in prices a little bit. So that's when we need to go back and look at, okay, in March, I have spent this much money in groceries. So now when I redo my budget in April, or I look at my budget, I'm going to have to increase that. But how much do I need to increase it by? Is there some place else I can save? And figure out those things as well. So that's the basics about Excel or a Google Sheet. As I said, we'll share an Excel document with you in the follow-up email that is based off of this that you can use or personalize to work for you. Are there any questions about using an Excel document? I also like it too because you can print it. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
This is probably beyond, well, it's beyond my understanding, certainly, but it might be beyond the objective of this class. But with Excel, can you import things from different, I don't know how to use Excel that well. It's all been by, self-taught, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Can you import things like some of these apps I've read about for budgeting? You can import or connect to your bank accounts. And I really like the concept of Excel. So I was just wondering if there's a way to import stuff, or do you have to just kind of consciously cut and paste and all that jazz?
As far as I know, you consciously have to cut and paste. It does do the calculating. Like I said, the formulas are set up, but it doesn't. I don't believe you can link like your bank account to automatically put in like, this is what I spent at groceries, and it's going to recognize that like an app would do.
Or like your credit card statement. So it would give you a breakdown. That's where I kind of get hung up. Anyway, Keep going. Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome. So, but yeah, that's a good question. So that's the benefits of apps. So one of the things I like about Excel is that it does take you to like recognize like how much am I spending on groceries and add up before I put it into the column. Because as you can see, like groceries is just the total amount spent in the last month versus like groceries week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. You could do it like that as well. But it does require you to put it in. Whereas you mentioned like apps, financial apps do a lot of that work for you. You can connect your apps to your different financial institutions. So when it comes to financial apps, there's kind of like 5 main apps available. Those that are tied to banking, those that focus on budgeting, those that focus on spending, saving, and as well as debt reduction. And so it's really important to think about like financial apps. If you came here thinking Sharon and I were going to say, this is the one to use, it's the best one ever. We don't really do that, because using a financial app depends on whether or not you want your accounts to be synced in with the app, or if you'd rather manually enter in your expenses and income and that kind of stuff. So like that kind of how comfortable you are with that information sharing as well. Whether or not what benefits you want of the app, how easy it is to use. Do you want it to track everything? Is there a specific thing you're focusing on? So we're just going to talk a little bit more about each of these kind of categories, and then discuss like what may or may not work for you. So the traditional banking apps are those that are tied to like your financial institution. So that could be a credit union or a local bank or national bank, and you use their app. And so it's only going to give you information about what's happening in your checking account. If you have a savings account tied to the bank, you might get that information. If you have a loan at that bank, that might also come through its app. But it's not a place where, where you're going to be able to input other expenses that happen and have it calculated and divided into categories. Some will say, like this past month, you've spent this much on groceries, you spend this much on gas, this much on clothing. Some banking apps do have that functionality, but they are all only tied to your account. So you're only getting, if you only use your debit card, you could see your whole picture. But if you're somebody who uses a debit card, who uses credit cards, who uses cash, you're not going to get that whole picture on a banking one. But it is kind of nice if you have automatic withdrawals. You can see to make sure that they're coming in and out, checking your daily balance if you're somebody who sometimes runs short on money. That's also a convenient factor, just to like, oh, okay, yep, I can cover this expense, I have enough. Or nope, I need to move some from savings to banking, that kind of stuff. So that's the function of, banking apps, pretty specific and tied only to the current financial institution that you use. The next one are budgeting apps. And so the budgeting apps are ones that are looking at your income, your expenses, would have credit card payments, and might be able to put in the whole amount of the credit card, but isn't going to tell you how to reduce your debt, if that makes sense. So these are just, a few of the more popular ones, or the ones that like continuously go on the like most popular apps for budgeting, the easiest use, consumer friendly, that kind of stuff. So NerdWallet and You Need a Budget are probably the two that, and Mint, I just realized I didn't put a Mint one on here. Those are probably the three that most people have heard about. As you can see, massive amount of reviews, 90,000 people for NerdWallet. They have a whole bunch of different functionalities for each of them. The NerdWallet, it does include your credit score, or it can also talk about like why it's changed, how you can build it up, and it'll show what you're spending in different areas, as well as trends. So are you spending more on clothing than you have in the past, that kind of stuff. You Need a Budget it's a zero-based budget. And so that means it wants at the end of, like when you're putting in what each category you want to spend. So it forces you to put in like, this is my clothing category, this is my groceries, gas, mortgage, that kind of stuff. It wants you to get down to $0 so that your money has a purpose for everything. Versus a NerdWallet, I don't believe their budget makes you be zero-based. So there's also Truebill, Weekly. So Weekly is more focused on somebody who would prefer to budget weekly versus monthly. The other ones are more monthly based budgets. So I thought that was it's another option for those of you who are new to budgeting and, feel like a week is a little bit more user friendly and not so overwhelming to be like, wow, I have to keep track of a whole month. That's a lot. I'm always using my debit card, credit card, whatever. And then there's also Money Monitor. Money Monitor is one where it's not synced in with your financial account. So it forces you to either take a snapshot of your receipt or manually enter, like I stopped at Cenex and I got $34 of gas and that kind of stuff. And then Envelopes is a budgeting system using the envelope method as well. And we're actually talking about the envelope method. So these are kind of more popular budgeting ones. And so they're just, suggestions of the ones that continuously show up that might work for you. So the next category is spending. And so these are different from the budgeting ones, as some of them, like spending, obviously you have your budget, but it doesn't really worry about your income as much. It worries about where are you spending your money at. Typically, these have a few more charts and graphs about where your money is going than a budgeting one, because budgeting is trying to get the whole picture, where the spending is really just focused on here's where your expenses are going. So there's not a whole lot of difference, but there is just a little bit of difference in like how each of these apps function and what may work better for you. So Money Manager, Spending, Monify, and then this is a different spending app, are pretty common ones that typically will rise to the top when people are looking at different things. Spending only has 7 reviews. It's really new, but it looks, when I looked at it, I thought it kind of looked like it would be a fun one. I liked its graphics better than others. Our next one is saving. So if you're a person who, would really like to save for specific things, there's one that has a 52-week money saving challenge. So each week it gives you a new challenge to help you grow your savings. So if you're a person who's not really good about like, okay, I'm going to put $50 away every paycheck, then you find yourself not doing it. This is just another way to kind of motivate you to be able to put in your goals and that kind of stuff. And then Loot and Peak Money also focus on savings and can help you, to break down like I'd like to save for a car. I'm going to save for a smartwatch. I'm going to save for a medical bill, fun things as well as like not fun things. So these are ones that focus strictly on savings and may or may not be tied to a specific an account or have all of your information synced to them as well. And then the last one is debt reduction apps. This is the only app that Sharon or I will probably ever endorse in our life as extension educators. And that is because it's called PowerPay. The Utah State Extension developed and designed this app. And it's really, super functional, and it's an easy way to be able to see. And so, it just helps you to look at your debts and determine like, what is my best method to be able to do this? So, in this example, we have 4 different types of debt that you entered in. They don't have to be linked, but they can be linked if you prefer to do that. You can add more debts. As you pay off debts, they go away. And then the nice thing about it is that it talks about like, if you use PowerPay, you'll pay this off in 2 years and 9 months for a cost of $5,905. If you don't use PowerPay, it's going to take you 4 years, 10 months, so almost double. And you're going to spend a couple more dollars over that. So you save $177 in 2 years. So 2 years less stress trying to pay a bill off might be super helpful for somebody. And it just gives you like the step-by-step process to be able to like reduce your debt. The thing with debt reduction is, as you were trying to reduce debt, we don't, when you're reducing debt, you cannot continue to contribute to it, if that makes sense. So if you're continuing to contribute, if you're still using your, American Express card or your Capital One card, then obviously this won't work as well for you, because the numbers won't be the same unless you're updating them all the time.
Sam,
Yes.
we have a question in the chat.
Mhm.
Also, I was just going to say about something like PowerPay. I think an advantage of PowerPay is that if you're someone who feels like you have some debt and it feels kind of overwhelming, or it's a little bit hard to get your head around, using something like PowerPay, I think, can help make it more approachable, make the debt reduction plan, whatever you come up with, feel more doable, less overwhelming.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The question in the chat is, have you ever tried out Mint or have any thoughts about it as a budgeting app?
Yeah. Sharon, have you used Mint or tried it out?
I got Mint a number of years ago when I was teaching this and wanted to try it out. And a lot of people like it a lot, and it's free. And now it's linked to a number of other services like TurboTax, and probably also, I think, Credit Karma. It has some advantages like that, and it gets always high ratings. I would say personally, I don't have a personal setup in my life that works very well for Mint, because I co-own a duplex with 2 friends of mine, and so I can't input all of their information too, and so Mint just doesn't get me. So it doesn't work that well for me. And I'm old enough, I'm 53. I'm still not crazy about the idea of linking all my accounts to something like that. So other people love it. So I would say if it works for you, go for it. It seems relatively safe.
Right. And that's a great question, where I guess we're getting short on time, but it's important with apps. We really, think about what you want, how you plan on using it. Look at reviews and see what other people are saying, because what might work for me may not work for you, because like Sharon gave a very, very specific reason, like it doesn't have this functionality or capability, so I'm better off using this instead. And to be able to look at and try out, every time I hear about a new app, I give it a whirl and see if I like it or not. But it doesn't always like what I like and what a coworker likes are very different. So Mint does work. It was one of the first budgeting apps to come out. So that's given some of its popularity as well. A lot of people, it is very user friendly. It's able to like, has a lot of functionality and stuff. But the biggest thing about apps is to try them out, see if it's working for you, give it, a couple of weeks, a couple of months. It's really kind of tricky. Have conversations like, oh, what do you enjoy? What do you enjoy about this app? What makes you frustrated about the app? What are the different things that you see it does or doesn't do as well? And then if you have, other questions, Deanna put in, if you're just learning about budgeting, would you suggest to avoid credit cards? If you're new to budgeting, like you can include your credit cards in. The thing is, so like, it depends on how you use your credit cards. If you're using them because you're consistently short on your budget is very different than if you're using them strategically as part of your budget. So that means like maybe you pay for gas and your groceries on your credit card and then you pay it off every month. Well, gas and groceries is already included in your budget. You're just using a credit card to pay it over your debit card. So that makes a difference as well. So you can include credit cards into your budgeting fairly easy. But if you're somebody who has credit card debt or using it to make up the difference in your budget, then it's going to be just a little bit trickier. So.
Because then it becomes an expense on your budget, actually.
Right.
Paying down the debt, so it changes things.
Yeah. So we are at time and we want to be respectful of yours. Sharon and I will hang out for a little bit. If you have more questions, feel free to put them in the chat. If not, thank you for attending. You can join us next week. We're going to talk about the envelope system and look a little bit at the envelopes apps as well. And we also have certificates of participation. We will be sending those out. I know we're a little bit behind from our previous classes, but we have your emails. We're getting them together. And we, of course, have more webinars coming up that you are welcome to check out and attend as well about a whole bunch of different categories. I have no idea what I just did there. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you, everybody. Great to see you all today. We'll see you next week.
Yeah. So Sue has a question. Does anybody know about review websites comparing all these apps, pros and cons? And actually, if you look in your app store, if you have a smartphone, you look in the app store, just search budgeting apps and spending apps or savings apps, and it'll have the different reviews in there. You can also, just Google, top 10 budget apps, and you'll find things from a whole bunch of different sources. You could spend hours upon hours looking and reading reviews and hearing what everybody says.
I also like a
problem
review.
is like- oh,
I know.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I also like a review website called Wirecutter. They don't, they're a division of the New York Times, actually, but they review all kinds of things, and they have money management app reviews in there. And I feel like they don't take advertising, so I feel like they're a little bit more impartial in that way.
That's
Do you
what
want
I
to
was.
include that in the follow-up email?
Put Wirecutter in there?
Yeah.
Sure.
It says a resource.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking for something where I never know if the reviews that I'm reading are paid or, there's an ulterior motive behind.
Right.
I'm pretty skeptical. And then I
Mhm.
find myself going down a rabbit hole and I'm like, oh, I need to just cut to the chase here. Who can do that for me? Thank
I
you.
know. Yeah, you bet.
Yep, you're welcome.
Great to have you today. I would say the other thing about apps is a lot of them have different levels of like accessibility depending upon if you get the free version or a paid version.
Mhm.
And I've never bought a version. I always just use the free version, and it does everything I need. So I try to, usually when I'm teaching about this, just kind of let people know, like, there's a lot of things you can do with the free one, but they always want you to get the upgrade, but I don't know that it's necessarily useful for most people even.
Yep. Yeah.
I was just curious more about the apps that would securely link if you're using two different credit cards, which I've had for a long time, and I typically pay them off. And then it's like, well, that data is already in there. I should be able to use that somehow and not have to hard key in everything. So I don't know what the best app is for that, but that was what I was trying to find. So I don't have to do so much data